Good day and welcome back to another World of Warcraft video. This is about Mr. Pandaria remix. I think there's maybe 3 more videos I have on this unless they make any changes. So this is about maxing or kind of gaining power at the endgame level and the most important things and ways in controlling that power. There are 3 pillars to power at endgame level. You have your infinite cloak of potential, you have your item upgrades, and you have your gems. Now, it's very important to understand that by the time you get to max level, you'll have all your Tinker gems, Meta gems, and Cogwheel gems. So those aren't so important. Obviously, the distribution is important, but I've already done a video on that. So let's talk the Cloak of Infinite Potential. And this is bearing in mind the increase that Blizzard's done to your stat gain. The Cloak of Infinite Potential is RNG. Whatever stats you get from Eternal Spools and that you pick up are kind of out of your control. But it's also the primary source of a lot of your secondary stats. Even item upgrades and gems are more about controlling the distribution of stats, more so than the actual stats themselves. Predominantly, maxing out things like your mastery, haste, and critical strike are going to come from your cloak more than they're going to come from even max level item upgrades. If you compare, for example, right now, the 3000 critical strike I have, it makes up almost half of my total critical strike stats at item level 346. And this scales a lot more even with the item upgrades. For example, the max amount of crit that I can gain from an item piece, if I look at my chest piece, is 1000 critical strike. All in all, if I upgrade all of my pieces, I'm looking at about 8000 crit that I can gain from my item upgrades. Of course, this is great, but by the time I fully upgrade all of my items, chances are I will have gained well over 8000 crit in my critical strike from my cloak, especially with the increased rates. What item upgrades and gems do is realistically allow you to more control a bit of the RNG that goes into your cloak. For example, if I roll heavily into crit on my cloak, as you can see I have a lot of mastery right now, if I roll heavily into mastery from my cloak, what I can do is I can use the gems and the gems I make to put them on my gear to control the stat gain. So maybe I'm a bit low on crit, put a whole bunch of crit pieces, and then that'll allow me to max out my crit whilst my cloak catches up in that stat line. The big thing is if you do play long enough, you'll eventually not need any secondary stats. A great example is I was doing a raid the other day, and I was playing with a player that had obviously played a lot of Mr. Pandaria remix, and he was one-shotting bosses on a normal raid. He was really crazy, and his big thing, ultimately at the end of the day, was armor. He had only armor and speed gems. The thing is, he said he had no use for any other gems, and I truly believe him because all of his secondary stats were probably capped and maxed. So it's very important to understand that the gems are more for controlling your stat distribution, but at an end game, like if you're a super late game Mr. Pandaria level, you won't need them with the rate your cloak gains. Right, we're talking like a max level cloak. And remember, the cloak scales up to 10 million in power, so the cloak can go a lot further than a lot of your gear upgrades, but it doesn't mean the cloak's going to be your big source of power upgrades at endgame. The cloak takes a while to get to that place. You need to play a lot of the game to get there. You will see more dramatic improvements at max level from upgrading your gear. So let's talk about upgrading gear. Item upgrades are the most crucial form of immediate power gain at an endgame level. And this is not due to secondary stats, as already explained. The secondary stat gain from pieces of gear, even with third level gems in it, your orange and purple gems in it, isn't crazy. Your item upgrade power largely comes from your primary stat. If you compare the primary stat that I've gained from my cloak right now to what I get from my weapon, you'll see the vast difference in primary stat overall. So if we take all of our pieces and we start to add up the primary stats, so stamina, intellect, together, we'll notice that we get a ton from the items. For example, my weapon will give me over 14,000 intellect if I fully upgrade it. Right now my cloak is giving me 3,000. It essentially will double my overall intellect, and since primary stat affects gem damage and ability damage, it's the most crucial section that you'll do. And this is the truest for anything. this weapon upgrade and this exponential gain it has, petering towards max item upgrade level, is your big primary gain. Now obviously bronze is hard to come by, but with the buffs that Blizzard's done, it's not out of the realm of possibility now, upgrading your gear quite a bit. Of course you have to upgrade it all together, but the important thing is that main stat gain. The more main stat you have, the more your gems hit, the more your character hits and heals for, and the better your character is overall. The gems you have in the gear will also upgrade, but more to, like I said, balance out whatever stats you're missing. My last thing, and I kind of skirted over it in the gem section, it's very important to understand the only difference between an orange and purple gem is the stamina stat, and although health is super crucial, don't be scared to place purple gems in your gear whilst you are still garnering them, because having 2 purple gems or 3 purple gems in your gear will help you max out your critical or mastery or haste a lot faster than trying to push them for the stamina bonus, at least when you first hit max level. And that's it. So your crucial elements are upgrading gear as soon as possible if you're looking for big power spikes, setting your gems up to counteract the stat distribution on your cloak, and of course farming threads throughout the game to eventually max stat all of your secondary stats. And that's it for endgame priorities and upgrade levels. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and if you have any advice, leave it down below. Bye.